Our music, MC, White Supremacy Records, 09. Yeah, building the hood, I'm about to build it up. We're building the hood, I'm about to build it up. We're building the hood, I'm about to build it up. Yeah, we about to build it up. Our music, come on, we about to build it up. MC, that's right. Yeah, we about to build it up. White Supremacy.
I, as an African-American man, had to come to the place in my life in which I had to rise and walk, rise out of my circumstances and walk toward a bright future. And in writing the book, I wanted to encourage men to do the same.
All right. And from my understanding, there's a spiritual foundation to the book. But there's a lot of social issues we face, such as low employment, such as no employment. Maybe I was a teenage mom. So these are real social issues. Maybe I can't get a job at all. Real social issues. If I have these social issues that can be seen as obstacles, how can I rise and walk?
Step one, acknowledge your issue. So acknowledge what you're facing. If it's unemployment, incarceration, if it's poor health, acknowledge that, because denial is deadly. It's probably the deadliest disease known to man. But secondly, stop making excuses. There's so many people who want to blame someone else, the man, the government, the economy, the president. We begin to make change when we acknowledge where we are and what we're going through, and that we look at ourselves as the centerpiece of change.
And you mentioned the government because, again, social issues. You have a lot of brothers who have been to jail, and once you come out, you have a record. And the government says you can't rise and walk because you can't get a good job. So if I've been in jail, I have a record, I want to rise and walk, but again, the government says I can't because I can't get a good job. What do you say to that, brother?
Do for self. One of the things that Minister Louis Farrakhan said many years ago, and I think he continues to say, is that we have to do for self. So it may be the case that you may not be able to get a job, but you can create a job. And part of my philosophy is have a job because in today's economy we need benefits. At the same time, if we're going to be self-sufficient then, we've got to be able to create a job for ourselves and for others.
What does that mean, create a job? How do I do that?
How do you do that? Entrepreneurship. Do you know that anything can be made to be a business? I've said this in motivational speaking that I've done. I believe that there is a book and a business inside every person. For example, this book is not just a book. The book lists for $12.99, but the book has become a documentary based upon chapter 5 of the book. It's become a keynote that I deliver at colleges. It's become a CD series. So 103-page book is really a product. So to any man who may be incarcerated, who cannot find a job, look at what you have that you can then market in order to be paid for your product, for your services.
Okay, all right. Let's move to self-defeating thoughts, because that also comes along with the suppression that may take place. Again, whether it's from the government, you can't get a job, or maybe it's from your life experiences. I was a teenage mom, or I used to be on drugs, or I used to do this. Some of those are self-defeating thoughts that can, again, be obstacles or hold you down from moving forward. How do we overcome some of those?
Stinking thinking.
Say it again.
Stinking thinking.
Stinking thinking.
In other words, telling myself that I can't do it. I'm sure all of us who are sitting here know of someone who has been a dream killer. Right? That's one thing we may have to overcome, but when we defeat ourselves, that's something entirely different. Death and life are in the power of the tongue. So we can truly speak death to our life or life to our life. So it's incumbent upon us that at all times and always speak life to our life.
Okay, all right. And following those thoughts of thinking life into yourself, turning that I can't into I can. How do we possibly begin a process of turning I can't into I can?
Let me go through the steps of my book.
Yes.
Number one, acknowledge your issue. What is the problem that you are facing? What's the obstacle you're facing? Number two, stop making excuses. Don't blame anybody else. Don't blame anybody else. Look at the person in the mirror. Step three, tap the source within. For those of us who believe in God, God has given us power to make change in our lives. For those who may not, hundreds of thousands of years of human evolution has created in each and every person. I know in my own life, for about 25 years, my father and I had problems, and it affected my development. But when I decided to approach him, to reconcile and rectify the situation, I could then move up in the normal. Step 6, let your mind and your money be of service. The fact is, we must go from risen and walking men to helping our families, our communities, our nation, and our world to also rise and walk. Step 7, hit the mark. Aim for what you want to go through, and then go for it.
And let's talk about step 7 a little bit further. Hitting the mark, you may have goals, you may have dreams, you have aspirations. Of course, again, obstacles are going to come up that may slow you down, that may hamper you from getting to where you want to go, getting to where you want to be. How do we overcome those obstacles? How do we navigate those life things that may just come up and throw us off track?
Mr. Magic, who was a DJ out of New York, said this: persistence overcomes resistance. The fact of the matter is, life is about obstacles. And if we understand that life is about having obstacles, then we have the proper mindset to overcome them when they occur. So many people believe that the road should be smooth. I heard somebody say, if it would be easy to do, everybody would be doing it. So what we've got to understand is that obstacles are a part of life, and we push through because in a real sense, we've got to survive before we succeed.
All right, all good stuff coming from Michael Teague. Mike, I wanted to talk about the young folks nowadays, and especially specifically about hitting the mark, because, you know, unfortunately, a lot of our young brothers and sisters leave school early. And not only do they leave school early, but sometimes they get caught up in nonsense that can really mess their life up. So let's talk about that for a little bit when we talk about hitting the mark and reaching our young folks so that they don't leave school early. How can we possibly motivate them, educate them so that they will stay in school, finish? And this is a broad topic, but if you could just shed some light on how to possibly reach some of the young folks of today.
I'll speak as a single father. I accept the responsibility to raise my son. And although we say, and I believe that it takes a whole village to raise a child, I think that the parents are the center of the village. So when I send my son to school, I send him to supplement what I give him. And the school is meant to educate, but and all parents are meant to give value. So I think to now this broad topic down, I think essentially it's the parent's responsibility to keep the child on track. And today, because there are so many ways for children to get sidetracked, in my opinion, once a child finishes school, they should come home, do their homework, get involved in an activity, and come back home, they can have some dinner, and finish some homework and go to bed. Because we've got to make sure that we know where our children are at all times.
Now you speak, which is perfect, makes perfect sense, but that's kind of the old school way of talking, old school way of thinking. Because a lot of times nowadays you have younger parents that may be raising these kids, and they may not have that old school mentality.
And Mike, you know what we have to do? See, the old school was the good school, right?
Right.
So really, it's about the older passing on the wisdom of the old school to the younger generation. The fact is, a teenage young lady may have a child, a teenage young man may become a father. They may not have within themselves the knowledge and the wisdom to know how to direct their lives, but there are older people in the community, parents, grandparents, aunts, uncles, friends, who can lead them in the right way. And I try to be relevant. At the same time, at 46, I've learned that old school was the best school.
And I agree with you 100%. I think, however, that for some strange reason, the younger generation and the older generation are connecting. So a lot of our young folks don't have an understanding of the history. They don't know where we've come from as a people. Partly because the old folks aren't reaching back and giving to them, and partly because they just don't care.
Exactly.
So we need to find a way to bridge that gap, whether maybe it's through social media. A lot of the young folks nowadays use Twitter, use Facebook.
Exactly.
Can you think of any other possible ways we can possibly bridge that gap so that the younger are actually sharing and talking with the younger?
I think this show bridges the gap. And I think that your mission to develop the hood, getting this out via television, is a way for you and others who come on the show to reach the gap to younger generation, or reach the gap, and bridge the gap, I should say, to younger generation. And I think young people don't want to be preached at, they don't want to be talked at, they want to be befriended, and they want someone that they can trust. Because the bottom line is, I think most young people want guidance. I think when we abrogate our responsibility and don't reach back, we're actually hurting them, and in turn, we're hurting ourselves.
All right. All good stuff from Michael Teague. His book, Rise and Walk.
In your book,
Set your purposeful living. Let's give it up for Michael Teague.
what significance does that hold, and how does one achieve that quest?
I said to myself about, 5 years ago, if I'm going to be the man that I need to be, I need to reconnect with my father. Because even though we had a fractured relationship, there are some things that I could have learned from him. And since we've reconnected, there are some things that I've learned from him. So I think the importance of reconnecting with your father is that there is wisdom that our fathers have that they can share with us. Secondarily, when we don't, as men, we don't have good relationships with our fathers, we grieve that loss. The fact is, grief equals loss. And maybe some of the anger we see among our young men in gang activity and other types of violence is because they're actually grieving the loss of their father and don't know how to manage it. But if we can get in touch with that and work through those emotions, then I think we can be better men, we can be better parents, and we can be better professionals.
Okay. Is there any redemption for the term? They used to use a term called deadbeat dads. Okay, a lot of these fathers were young fathers. You spoke about being a young single mother. Well, a lot of those problems that a lot of so-called deadbeat dads, if they were young, they made some bad mistakes as far as choices they made. But as they got older, they learned some different things. Like you said, they have now. But is there any redemption for them? In the eyes of society, is there redemption for a deadbeat dad?
Brother, that's a heavy question. I'm going to try to answer it. Brother, tell me your name.
My name is Atiba Quasi.
Atiba
Quasi.
Atiba, I think there is redemption for deadbeat dads. I think when any person decides that they want to make a change, they have opened the door for that redemption. First, there's redemption with the father for himself. Then there's redemption with the father for his child or children, the child's mother, the family. I think that a deadbeat dad, quote unquote, should not necessarily look to society to have a different perception. But if he has a different perception for himself, then that's the main perception. You ever heard the phrase, it's not what you call me, it's what I answer to that counts? You understand what I'm saying? So if society, for example, if I was a deadbeat dad and I had a change of heart, society may never see me differently, but as long as my son sees me differently, his mother and my family, then that's the main thing.
All good words from our guests, Michael Teague and Renee McBride Williams. Please give them another hand.